Today I want to show you how you can use the change range node in Redshift to drive different parameters of your shader. Let's say you have those spheres here, or any other objects inside of your scene that share the same shader. And the color of those should all vary a little bit from object to object, but you don't want to use another material for each of those objects individually, but you want to drive all of this within the one shader they are all sharing. And the way we are going to do it today is by using a color user data node. And if we just plug that into our output, you can see everything turn black because we haven't specified which attribute we want to show. And we have a few options. We can choose between MoGraph, which works with effectors like the random effector or the shader effector, basically every color information we can get from MoGraph objects within Cinema 4D. And we also have the option to choose objects. This means we can look at the object color, the display color, layer color, and the geometry ID color, which is what we are going to use today. As you can see, each object got its own color. That is because every object has its own mesh and therefore has a separate geometry ID. And this only works because our cloner is set to instances. If we were to set our cloner to render instances, you can see that each object has the same color. That is because they are all sharing the same mesh. So in order for this to work, even with a cloner, we need to set it to instances or use the random effector or the shader effector like I talked about before. We could plug this color user data node now directly into our diffuse color, but if we remember correctly, we want to drive this red color here and change its hue or its brightness. And now to control that color, we drop down a color correct node. And we are connecting our color to that color correct node, connect this to the output. So far, nothing has changed because we haven't changed any parameters inside of the color correct node yet. We can make it darker or we can make it brighter. But all of this applies to all the objects at the same time, and this is not what we want. To drive those values, we need a change range node. And we're going to plug our color user data inside of here and plug that into the output. And immediately you can see everything turned black and white. That is because everything is now working on a scale from 0 to 1, meaning 0 is black and 1 is white. But as it's now numbers, we can use this to drive our parameters inside of the color correct node. Let's just plug this into the gamma and plug our color correct into the output. And you can see it changed ever so slightly, but that's not enough. Let's plug our change range back into the output and clamp the values a bit. Just a little bit. So we have more contrast going on and therefore more changes in our color correct node. But our output values are still 0 to 1. So we are still shifting between a gamma from 0 to 1. So 0 is black and 1 would be white. In this case, normal, as the gamma of 1 is the default value. And this is where the change range node gets really powerful, because we can use it now to map our input values to different output values. So let's say we want our gamma to shift between 0.4 and 1.2. So it gets pretty dark but not super bright. So you can see that works already. Maybe we can make it a little bit less. Yeah, that works. And now let's duplicate that change range node and drive our hue. And the hue shift operates between 0 and 360. And as you can see, we get all the colors in between. So we want to be a bit careful with that one. Let's plug our color user data into here and this one into the hue. And not a lot has changed because 0.4 and 1.2 don't change that much of our hue. So let's maybe put down -10 and +10. So now our colors are ranging between more of an orange color to more of a pinkish color. And let's duplicate this one last time and plug this into our saturation. And immediately you can see everything is looking weird. That is because saturation works between values of 0 and plus whatever you put into there, but it never goes negative. So here we want to have maybe like 0.8 so slightly desaturated, and 1.5, so a bit more saturation. And maybe the pink is a little bit too much, so let's go a bit easier on the hue shift and maybe drive this one towards the middle, so we don't have that much pink going on. If you want to go even further and not only change the color, you can of course do that. So let's just duplicate that change range here, plug our color user data back in, and plug that one into the roughness. And now all of those are super rough because we're operating between values that don't even work for roughness. So 1 is the maximum, and then just put this one to 0. And now you can see we have some super shiny ones as well as some pretty diffused ones. And this is how you can use the change range node in Redshift to drive different parameters inside of your shader. I hope you enjoyed that one and have fun with it, and see you next time.